Hi guys, Garage RC here, back on another video. Today's video is about counter steer modification for the Mini Z Evo all-wheel drive. Before we get into the video, just a bit of housekeeping. The website is now live. I'm really conscious after kind of seeing how other channels in the past I've seen operate start to push their website and their products heavily. I don't want to do that. For me, the channel is about telling you guys about modifications I'm doing, what cars are out there, what I think of them, and my honest opinion. And I don't want that to change just because I have a website that's selling the cars. So I will try and keep the two separate. If you want to look at the website, the link is in the description below. Feel free to have a browse through. I've tried to keep it as honest as possible, so whatever stock is in stock I've got. Whatever says back order means I can get from the supplier quite quickly, and if it says out of stock, that means the supplier hasn't got it in stock and I don't know when they'll have it in. Hopefully that way you won't be ordering things and waiting a long time. So thanks everyone for the support on this. I've been inundated with orders before the website even went live, thanks to the Instagram posts I made, which I made just to show what I'd got arrived in out of excitement, and next thing I know I'm packaging and sending things off. So thanks a lot guys for all your support. The Instagram is growing really well. I think we're on 600 or 700 followers now, so if you pop over there and give me a follow, that'd be great. But otherwise, I am happy to say the website is working. But again, I am going to try and keep the channel separate. So feel free to ask me questions anytime you want, as you always do. But we're going to focus on reviews and modifications on the channel. And my next big review coming up, which is nearly ready, will be the triple test of the GLD, the DRZ version 2, and the TechStorm XRX. So today's video is back to my old favorite MA030 Evo. And this video is inspired by a channel called Drift 44. Now, Drift 44 is a drift channel with a huge following, and he does some amazing mini RC drift videos where he has an MA030 doing some pretty spectacular moves. And he's got a counter steer set up on his Mini Z, and I've experimented with this in the past. I've got some videos on Instagram of a counter steer setup, but I thought today I'd show you the process. And I'm not going to get too much into the maths. I'll explain it briefly. But there are other channels like Beaver's Hobby channel. If you check out one of his videos on counter steer, he goes into great detail on how the equation works and why we do it. I'll try and do a brief overview. So the reason we do counter steer is because traditionally with all-wheel drive cars, as the wheels spin, all four wheels spin, as the car slides, you don't really see the front wheel steering much in the slide. You see more of a sort of a four-wheel slide. Whereas if you look at a rear-wheel drive car drifting like a DRZ or a GLD, you see the wheels counter steer to control the car around the corners. Well, the idea of a counter steer gear mod is to make the rear wheels spin faster than the front wheels. This enables the front wheels to be able to counter steer. To do this, you need a front one-way diff, which I have, a rear locked diff, and a gear ratio that makes the back wheel spin more. So the standard gear, I'm making a bit of a mess here already guys. I've lost the standard gear. I had it here just to show you a second ago. Where has it gone? Right, there we are. Okay. So the standard rear pinion gear on the MA030, I think is about 8 teeth. And that's this here. Okay. And my plan is to try and get a bigger gear on the back. So this is a 17 teeth. This might be a bit ambitious, but I have got smaller gears available. Now, let's just see if I can get that in focus. 17 teeth. Okay. So the way we're going to do this is obviously we make this gear bigger, and this goes into the back of the car there. So this is actually for the rear. Now I've taken this out, which was a mistake, because I always have to thread it back through, and it doesn't always go all the way back in. But we'll deal with that later. The idea is that when the rear part of the car attaches, we want this is a locked rear diff to be able to engage on this. But at the moment this gear is too big compared to the gear that should be there, which is a lot smaller, as you can see. So we have to move this bit down that way. And the reason I'm using my fixed rear diff to do this is I don't want to ruin a perfectly good standard diff, which is what I'd have to do. I'd have to fix this and then chop out the middle of this, and this is still usable for when I do racing. So I want to keep that. I'm going to use this diff, and this is easier to adjust. I've literally just got to polish down these sections on the front, the rear locked diff. So we're going to take this apart. Let's get a screwdriver. So I do like these locked rear diffs that you get from Kyosho. They're expensive, I think, but I like the fact you can actually disassemble them in this way. So the bigger the gear you get driving this, it increases the gear ratio, so the gearing becomes higher, which means the rear wheel spin more. Okay, right, so yeah, I've disassembled. Guys, my setup isn't quite good today. I can't understand why. I've got everything where I normally have it, but everything seems to be kind of dark and shaded, so I apologize for that. Okay, so we're going to cut these pieces of plastic off, and hopefully I can still get enough of a screw in to lock it in. If not, I will glue it into position without the screws, because obviously this is where the screws go into the diff to hold it in place. So off we go. How am I going to remove these? Well, I'm just going to cut them off and then sand off the rest with sanding paper. So here we are, guys. I am now cutting off. I've already cut off 2 of them. Just be careful when you're doing this. Wear safety glasses so you don't get poked in the eye as this breaks off. So there we go. I've removed all 3. Now I'm just going to sand these so they're a bit more level. And the easy way to do that is on sanding paper. Probably the old-fashioned way of just backwards and forwards. Now I could have just done this from the start, but to save some time, looks fairly good. Right. Wasn't too bad. Let's try that out. Now the other thing I'll have to do is shorten the screws so they don't poke into the gear, poke out the other end. We don't want to get into the teeth. So again, be very careful. Wear safety glasses. I'm only going to pop off 1 millimeter off the end. That should be enough. So here we are. I'm just testing the size of the screw. So you can see that there. It's not going to go into the teeth, basically. It'll just go into the hole we've created. Right. So let's line that back up. Screw that in. It doesn't look flat enough to me. I think I might have to do some sanding. Okay, let's go back and do a little bit more sanding. Right, I might do this last bit manually. With a file. So I don't want to file the bits in between now. I just want to file the screw holes. Okay, so I managed to do that. I've cut the screws smaller, screwed them in. That seems to work. I'm just going to pour some hot glue to give it a bit more strength. Not that I don't trust it, but it doesn't do any harm. Especially the pressure it's going to be under. So I've got my trusty glue gun here, which I've just turned on. Let's wait for that to warm up. Oh, it's out of batteries. That's no good. Right. Okay, so guys, that's done. A bit of hot glue inside it. That wasn't too difficult to do. Sorry I couldn't do that on camera. I had to go to somewhere where I had a mains glue gun plugged in as my battery operated when I run out. And that looks pretty good. So the idea being now there should be enough space. I may have to use some shims to get this perfect. And that will depend how much I've sanded it down and how accurate that is. But that looks like it's going to work. Now this isn't the actual setup. This is the one that you get with the MA030, which enables you to use it in 94mm mode, and I'm just using that as a tester to help me line up if this is about right. Now I think I may have overdone it slightly, but that's okay because I can shim it back if I need to. If not, I'll have to find a larger pinion gear, which will mean even more counter steer, but I think I've got that right. Let's see how we go. So I'm going to reconstruct the car, and then if there's any issues I'll tell you how many shims I used. The modification went well. In the end though, I had to use a 15-tooth pinion on the rear axle, and that required no shims, and it fitted perfectly with the modification I'd done. So that gave a CS ratio of 2.125. So that means I think the back wheels spin roughly twice for every one spin in the front. The footage coming up, you'll see how that works, and it worked pretty well. I just wanted to quickly go over, there is an easier way to do this mod if you don't want to be damaging a diff. Okay, so the first way I did this, it doesn't give as good a CS ratio, which is probably quite good if you want to practice getting into the driving style, because it is different. This is a Eagle Racing diff. It comes with different size diff cogs. So I think 28 is a standard rear for a Mini Z, and you can use a 26. If you use the 26, it'll give you a higher gearing, along with, now this you may or may not have, but I thought as it's a Mini Z part you might have some lying around. This is a 9-tooth pinion which fits over the shaft for this car very well, and what I've done is I've just chopped it down so it's shorter, and that works pretty well to give a CS ratio I think of 1.5 or 1.25 or something like that, which is not amazing, but it's enough so that the car's rear wheels do spin more than the front, and it's a good introduction to CS counter steer without having to do too much to the car. Obviously the front one way you still need, but it just means you're not chopping anything up. So that's a 9-tooth Mini Z, I think, rear wheel drive or MR03 or MR02 pinion, and that's an Eagle Racing diff. So that modification does make it easier. For the drift test I'm using LF1 DS racing tyres, and the reason I'm using those is I'm trying to do the kind of tricks where you can stop the car, or broken the spoiler there on this one, where you can stop the car mid-drift, put the brakes on base and the car will stop, and the LF tyres give a little bit more grip for that. It is personal preference, but I am running it on a very glassy surface, so you'll see how that works. Okay guys, so that's enough talking. Let's get on with some drifting. So coming up now is just a shot to show how the rear wheels spin more than the front. And you can almost see the front wheels appear to be going backwards because they're slower in this footage. A lot of these shots I took just to show how the car moves differently now. It kind of turns in a lot faster. But also, if you look carefully, you can see as the car goes over the join in the tiles, the suspension has to work quite hard. And I was having a blast just spinning it around and getting the feel of it. It was harder at first. At first it felt a little bit uncontrollable, and that's just because it was more of a rear wheel drive feel to the car. Once I kind of understood that, then the car became a lot more agile. You can still do the big circular drifts, it just takes more control to keep it in position. As you can see here, it's going over the tiles there, you can see the suspension just lifting a little bit, and then you can see as it moves side to side, the car rolling as well. So like I said, a lot of this was inspired after watching Drift 44's videos of him spinning around cones and tricks, and I wanted to do a similar thing, so I thought I'd go for the similar setup, and he was very nice to tell me what size pinion gear he had on his, but his setup is amazing. So here's a great shot, and you can see the front wheel steering the car around. Ultimately this is a setup if you've already got the hang of driving your car all-wheel drive with a standard setup and you want to do something more. The front one way is essential, you're not going to get the counter steer without it, and once you've got this, it does make the car just respond. Even without the gyro one, I was able to get it to maneuver and do tricks. I've got about 10-15% gyro on here, and I use it like training wheels. I'll turn it up to start off with and turn it down as I get the hang of it. But you can see this was a lot of fun. Car spinning around the spot when required. And this is a 98mm wheelbase, and you can see it's pretty nimble now. So later on now, I've got some footage of me testing the control of the car around cones. This shot's quite good where we're reversing. You can see the front wheels aren't spinning. That's because of the front one-way diff. And that's why when you hit reverse, the car doesn't move much when you've got that set up. But it's nice to see it in action in slow-mo. So I think overall, what you can see here is, you know, where you want to take your MA030 if you're into drifting. You've got to do this mod. It is great. I think ultimately it's what you're going to use it for. So if you're doing more great big sweeping drifts, it's easier with the standard setup, but it's more fun with the counter steer. So here I'm just testing my skills around some cones. This is new for me. I don't tend to do this kind of thing, but now you can see with this setup I'm not struggling at all to keep within the cones and keep it sharp. But moving on here, that's a rear wheel drive, and I'm trying to do some comparison footage here. I was able to pull the same manoeuvres on a small surface that normally I wouldn't try with my MA030 for risk of it falling off the top of the worktop. But in some later on footage you can see better the counter steer in action. I think I've got a slow-mo shot coming up. But yes, it's definitely a mod worth doing, but it is tricky. It is tricky. Okay guys, I'm going to leave it at that now. If you like the video, please give me a like, subscribe to the channel. More content coming soon. I've got the group test of the XRX, GLD and DRZ version 2 that's taking forever to film, but it will be here soon. So guys, enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys all next time.